So for those of you who haven't been here recently, this Āṉma-Viddai is a song that Bhagavan composed. It's what is called a kirtanam. It's a particular style of classical musical song. The Pallavi and Anupallavi, that's the refrain and sub-refrain, were written by Muruganar. The meaning of the refrain is aiyē ati-sulapum, Āṉma-Viddai aiyē ati-sulapum. That means extremely easy. Āṭma-Viddaya extremely easy. Āṇma-Viddai is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit term Āṭma-Viddaya, which Vidya means knowledge in a very broad sense. It also means science. So we can take Āṭma-Viddaya to mean self-knowledge or the science of self-knowledge. So what Bhagavan is saying here is, what he implies here, is that knowing oneself is extremely easy. Well, that was written by Muruganar, but every verse is leading up to that. So every verse is giving a reason why knowing oneself is extremely easy. So now we are doing the third verse. In this verse, I'll just quickly go over the previous two verses just to get the continuity. In the first verse, Bhagavan said, though oneself incessantly and indubitably or imperishably exists as real, the body and world, which are unreal, sprout and arise as if real. The implication there is, because of the appearance of the body and world, we are not aware of us. Though we are always aware of ourselves, we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. Then in the next sentence he says, when thought, which is composed of unreal darkness, is dissolved in such a manner that it does not ever revive even an iota, in the heart space, which alone is real, oneself, the sun of pure awareness, will shine spontaneously or by oneself. That is, the connection between these two sentences is that, according to Bhagavan, all phenomena, whether seemingly physical or seemingly mental, all are only thoughts. All phenomena are mental phenomena. In other words, what we see as a world is nothing but our own thoughts. When in a dream we see a world, while we're dreaming, that world seems to exist outside ourselves. But when we wake up, we realize that it was all mental fabrication. According to Bhagavan, this present world, our present state is just another dream. This world is likewise a mental fabrication. So it's the body, when mind rises, it projects a body and world, or when ego rises, it projects a body and world, and which are all only thoughts. So when thought is dissolved in such a manner that it does not revive even an iota, in the heart space, our real nature, the sun of pure awareness, will shine spontaneously, is what he's saying in that sentence. Iruḻadaṉṇai, darkness will cease. That means the darkness of self-ignorance and darkness of desire will cease. Suffering will end. Happiness will surge forth. Therefore, extremely easy is self-knowledge. So the implication here is all we need to do to know ourselves as we actually are is to put an end to all thought. But how to put an end to all thought, that he explains in the second verse, in which he says, since the thought, this body composed of flesh itself is I, alone is the one thread on which various thoughts are strung. So since it's the one thread, sometimes Bhagavan refers to this thought, the body itself is I, that is ego. That Bhagavan often said, ego is nothing but the thought, I am this body, or the thought I. That is here by thought he means the awareness of ourself as a body. Now we're aware of ourselves as I am this person, I am this body. That erroneous self-awareness, that is ego. And that is the one thread on which all the various thoughts are strung. In other places he says it's the root of all thoughts. It amounts to the same thing. So in order to get rid of all thoughts, all we need to do is to get rid of this first thought, I, the ego. And how to get rid of ego, he says in the next clause. If one goes within investigating what is the place from which I spread or I rose, thoughts will cease. That is, if we turn our attention, so long as we turn our attention outside, ego is, so long as we're aware of anything other than ourselves, we are thereby nourishing and sustaining ego. When we, this ego, turn our attention back within to try to see who am I or what is the source from which I rose, ego will cease and all other thoughts will therefore cease along with it. Thoughts will cease, and in the cave, that means the cave of one's heart, āṇma-viddai, pure self-awareness, will shine spontaneously as I am I. That is, now we are aware of ourselves as I am this body. When ego is dissolved, that false awareness, I am this body, will cease, and we'll be aware of ourselves just as I am I. In other words, I am this. We cannot be anything other than what we actually are. But we cannot be anything other than ourselves. So I am this body. We're identifying ourselves with something other than ourselves, because body appears and disappears. We exist even in dream when this body isn't appearing, and in sleep we appear without any body at all, neither a dream body nor a waking body. So the body is not what we actually are. So we are. So long as we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, we're aware of ourselves as something other than what we actually are. So our real nature is I am I. That is, we are nothing but ourselves. That awareness, I am just I'm not any other thing, that is what Bhagavan refers to here. And then he says, this is silence, the one space of pure awareness, the abode of bliss. Therefore extremely easy is āṇma-Viddai, the science of self-knowledge. So now we come to the third verse. In the first sentence, Bhagavan says, well, the first two sentences are rhetorical questions. In the first sentence, he says, taṉṉai yaṛidaliṉṭṛip yedaṟihileṉ. That literally means, without knowing oneself, if one knows whatever else, what? What means, like in English we say, so what? It means, what value does that, what's the use of knowing everything else without knowing oneself? So whatever else we may know, if we don't know ourselves, it's of no value at all. It's, all the knowledge we have now seems to be of value to us. It seems to be useful. It's useful to know when we have to pay our rent. It's useful to know where the shops are. It's useful to know how to get to work, how to earn money. We have so much knowledge which seems to us to be useful. According to Bhagavan, it's all useless. Why it seems to us to be useful and to Bhagavan it seems to be useless? Because we take ourselves to be this body. If I am this body, then I need money, I need to have a livelihood, I need to pay my rent, I need to eat food, I need to breathe air, I need to, so many things. And for all these things I need knowledge. But if I'm not this body, then I don't need any of these things. So according to Bhagavan, we don't actually, all that we now take to be knowledge, and what we take to be such useful knowledge, according to Bhagavan, it's all useless. Because in sleep we don't know any of these things, but we're perfectly happy. What's the difference between, in sleep we're perfectly satisfied. No, we don't experience any dissatisfaction in sleep. In waking and dream, body and world appear, we know so many other things, we're aware of so many things other than ourselves, and what is the result? We are constantly dissatisfied. There's never a moment in waking and dream when we are completely satisfied. Even when we achieve what we want something more. So all our knowledge of things other than ourselves is not giving us satisfaction or happiness, it's just making us unsatisfied. So according to Bhagavan, knowing anything other than ourselves, and here knowing means being aware of anything other than ourselves, is of, well, he doesn't say it, but he implies it by asking what avail is it? Or so what if you know everything else? It's of no use. Then in the next sentence he says, taṉṉai yaṟindiḍiṛpiṉ yuḻadaɖiya. If one knows oneself, then what else exists to know? According to Bhagavan, when we know ourselves, that is when we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, there's nothing else for us to know. Here he expresses as a rhetorical question, but in other places he expresses this. He expresses the same idea very directly. Bhagavan wrote this in April of 1927. A few months later, he wrote Upadesha also at the request of Murugan. And in verse 27 of Upadesha, he says, Arivariyameyum atra varive arivahum. That means the knowledge or awareness that is completely devoid of knowledge and ignorance is true awareness, is awareness, but that implies is real awareness. So what he says when he says it's completely devoid of knowledge and ignorance, that means devoid of knowledge and ignorance about anything other than oneself. So long as we're aware of anything other than ourselves, when we're aware of things other than ourselves, we're also aware that there are so many things we don't know. So both knowledge and ignorance pertains to things other than ourselves. But that awareness which is completely devoid of such knowledge and ignorance, that is the real awareness. Āṉma-Viddai, this is real, this is the truth. Why? He answers in the final sentence, arivadaku ondrilei. That is, there's nothing to know. That is, when we know what we actually are, there is nothing else to know. All other things seem to exist only because we've risen as ego. And when we exist as ego, we are then aware of multiplicity, and however much we know, there's so much more we don't know. So knowledge and ignorance are, or in duality, knowledge and ignorance are inseparable. We know what we don't know only when we only when we have knowledge of other things we are aware, but there are other things that we are not aware of. So even our ignorance arises along with ego. Both knowledge and ignorance both arise. That is, both knowledge and ignorance of things other than ourselves arise with ego. So long as we rise as ego, we're aware of ourselves as I am this person, I am this body. That is not real awareness, according to Bhagavan. Our awareness of things other than ourselves is not real awareness. Real awareness is only the awareness that is completely devoid of all such awareness of anything other than ourselves. Why? Because when we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, arivadaku ondrilei, there's nothing else to know. And then a year later, Murugan asked Bhagavan to write another poem, Ulladu Napadu, and there he expanded on this idea even more in verses 11, 12, 13 and 14. Sorry, 10, 11, 12, 13. He expands on this same idea. I won't go through these verses entirely, but he says that in verse 10 he says, without ignorance there's no knowledge, and without knowledge there's no ignorance. That is, they're a pair of opposites. They come together. Knowledge. That here Bhagavan is talking about knowledge and ignorance of things other than ourselves. But knowing oneself alone is real knowledge. He says there. Then in the next verse he says, knowing other things without knowing oneself is is not knowledge, it's only ignorance. When one knows oneself, both knowledge and ignorance will cease. Again, he's talking about the knowledge and ignorance of things other than ourselves. Then in the next verse 12, he says, very similar to what he said in verse 27 of Upadesha Arivari Armeum Atradu Arivame. That which is completely devoid of knowledge and ignorance is real knowledge or true awareness. That which knows is not real knowledge. Since oneself shines without anything other than oneself to know, oneself is real knowledge. It is not a void. Then in verse 13 he says, Jnanamam taṇṇai, oneself who is awareness, jnana, alone is real. Nānabam jnanam ajñānamam, knowledge of multiplicity is ignorance. And then he says, even this ignorance, which is unreal, doesn't exist other than oneself who is real knowledge. Just as all the many ornaments do not exist apart from gold. Gold is the substance, but ornaments just forms. So all this ignorance, but what is the substance behind all this appearance? It's only ourself who are pure awareness. Bhagavan says that very brief. I mean, what Bhagavan elaborates on there, he says very briefly here. If one has known oneself, what else exists to know? So other things seem to exist only when we rise as ego. When we rise as ego, we are obviously not aware of ourselves as we actually are. When we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, ego will thereby be dissolved, because ego is just a wrong awareness of ourselves. And with the cessation of ego, all other things cease. So there's nothing else to know when we know ourselves. That's why he says in the previous sentence, without knowing oneself, what's the use of knowing all these other things? All these other things are a mere appearance. What is real is only oneself. That's the implication. Then in the third sentence, he says, Biṉṉa vuyirgaḻila vilākkeṉumat taṉṉai taṉiluṇara miṉṉun taṉuḻāṉma prakāśamē. That means when one knows in oneself, that self there implies one's real nature, which is the light that shines abhiṉṇa. Abhiṉṇa means without separation, division, difference or distinction in separate living beings. That he described the living beings are bhiṉṇa, but the light that shines within them that's our own real nature, which is the light that shines within all these diverse living beings. It shines without any difference. So the main clause is when one knows oneself, when one knows in oneself that self, within oneself, ātma prakāsa, that's the light of oneself, the shining or clarity of oneself, miṉṇun. Miṉṇun means it flashes forth like lightning. We are all aware, I am. But each of us says, I'm aware, I am Michael. Each one of us is aware of a particular name and form we take ourselves to be. But what is common in all living beings is that fundamental awareness I am. Without being aware I am, I cannot be aware I am Michael. My fundamental awareness is not this awareness I am Michael, but only the awareness I am. That's the awareness of my own existence. That awareness of my own existence is the same awareness that is shining in each and every person. The difference is, like in that verse 13 of Ulūdhanapadu, Bhagavan talks about gold ornaments. But gold in all gold ornaments is the same. It's just the shapes change. You can melt down a necklace and make it into a ring or make it into a bangle, but it's still the same gold. So there's no difference the pure awareness, I am, but shining in each and every one of us is the same. From the greatest saint to the worst sinner, that light of self-awareness, I am, that is equal in all. That is there's no difference whatsoever, no separation. So all the distinction arises because we identify ourselves with a particular name and form. Because this body is called Michael, I'm aware of, because I'm aware of this body as myself, I say I am Michael. So this awareness of name and form is what creates all this seeming difference. But actually none of this difference is real. What is real is the one undifferentiated pure awareness, I am. So when one knows that I am within oneself, that is when one knows what one actually is, within oneself, āṇma-prakāśamē. Prakāśamē means the shining or clarity or light of oneself will shine forth like miṉṉun means miṉṉun means to flash, to flash forth. Lightning is called miṉṉal. Because lightning is formed of electricity. Electricity is nowadays called miṉṣāram, the essence of that flashing. But why Bhagavan uses this word miṇṉun here? That is, we are either aware of ourselves as we actually are, or we're aware of ourselves as something else. We cannot be, there's no midway between ego and pure awareness. Either we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, or we're aware of ourselves as something other than we actually are. If we're aware of ourselves as anything other than what we actually are, that is ego. So when we turn our attention within to know who am I, if we turn our attention within keenly enough to see what we actually are, to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, ego is thereby destroyed, and the pure awareness shines forth like a flash of lightning. It's a sudden revelation. And so which comes first? Is it the dissolution of ego leads to the shining forth of self-knowledge, or is it the shining forth of self-knowledge which leads to a dissolution of ego? They're one and the same thing. It's either we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, or we're aware of ourselves as ego. So the shining forth of self-knowledge is itself a dissolution of ego. The dissolution of ego is itself a shining forth of self-knowledge. Then in the final sentence, Bhagavan says, aruḻ vilāsamē. There's no word for this is, but the implication is this is aruḻ vilāsa. Vilāsa means the shining forth or amorous play or beauty of grace. Vināśamē, the destruction of the annihilation of ego. Iṉba vikāsamē, the blossoming of happiness. In every verse, or in all the 5 verses, Bhagavan ends the last clause, mentions happiness. The Tamil word for happiness is iṉbu or iṉbam. In the first verse, he says, iṉbam pongame, happiness will surge forth. In the second verse, he says, iṉba taṉṉai, the abode of bliss. That is the state in which self-awareness shines forth as I am I. This is the abode of bliss. Here he describes it as iṉba vikāsamē, the blossoming of happiness. In the 4th verse, he describes it as imbambodiye. Ambodiye means ocean, the ocean of happiness. And in the final verse, iṉbu taṉṉai, happiness will appear or shine forth. So but happiness is Bhagavan's teachings are all about happiness. Who Am I was first published. It was published in the form of questions and answers that were recorded by Shiv Prakāśamē Pillai. Bhagavan, of his own accord, rewrote it in the form of an essay. And when he did so, he added an extra paragraph at the beginning, in which he said, Sakala jivagalum dukkumembadindri epodum sukkumai iraka virambavadalam. Since all jivas, all living beings, desire or want to be happy always without any, without what is called dukkham. Dukkham means misery or dissatisfaction. So we want to be happy without any dissatisfaction. Since for everyone has greatest love for oneself, and since happiness alone is the cause of love. What he means by that is we love whatever makes us happy. So since happiness alone is the cause of love, and since we love ourselves, the implication is that we ourselves are happiness. And then he says, and since in order to attain that happiness, which is one's own real nature, which one experiences daily in sleep, which is devoid of mind, it is necessary for oneself to know oneself. For this, the principal means, the mukhya sadhanam, is the jnana vichara, the awareness investigation, who am I? So he starts who am I by talking about happiness. Because as he says here, but one thing we're all seeking is happiness. Well, even the wickedest tyrants in the world who are causing so much suffering to other people, they're doing it for their own happiness. They are deriving happiness because they want the power, they want the money, they want... so every living being, from the smallest ant with its carrying a grain of sugar, or to the greatest gods in heaven, what we are all seeking, all our efforts are directed towards one thing: happiness. Even when we make great sacrifice for others, we're doing it for our own satisfaction, because we are happy by making others happy. So happiness is what we are all seeking. The problem is we are seeking it in the wrong place. We're seeking happiness in things other than ourselves. Bhagavan said there's not an iota of happiness in any other thing. Happiness is our own real nature. So in order to experience happiness, we have to know ourselves. That's why in this song about, he's saying how easy it is to know ourselves. Every verse he ends with mentioning happiness, because that is what we are all seeking. And to go back to this final sentence, there are three clauses: aruḻ vilāsamē, vināśamē, iṉba vikāsamē. Aruḻ vilāsamē, that is the shining forth or amorous play or beauty of grace. What is grace? Grace is generally we consider grace as the kindness and compassion of God. In other words, it's God's love for us is grace. So that love is our own real nature. So when that ātma-prakāśa, when that light that clarity of pure self-awareness shines forth, that is the shining forth of grace. So grace is nothing other than our real nature. It's the love that we have for ourselves. That is grace. But now we are misusing that grace by having desire for other things. And so other things are looming large in our life. The people we love, the things we love, our money, our social status, our job, all these things appear very important to us because we have desire for them. Because we have desire for them, we pay attention to them. Attention is grace. Because our interest in things, our liking for things, that is grace. So this world seems very real because of the interest and liking we have for it. If we develop love to turn within, slowly our desire and attachment for anything other than ourselves will gradually wane. That's what's called that is what's called the destruction of vasanas. Vasanas are nothing but our desire for things other than ourselves. So when those vasanas, when we get more and more love to know ourselves, all our desires and attachments for other things will wane. And so it is grace, it is the love that we really are, that is that our real nature has for us as we really are. That is what is drawing us on this path. That is what is, because grace has enabled us to understand the unsatisfactory nature of bodily existence. So grace is, Bhagavan used to say, grace is the beginning, the middle and the end. That is, it's grace that starts us off from the path, it's grace that leads us along the path, and the ultimate goal is grace itself. That is that pure self-awareness always shining blissfully in our heart as I, that is grace. So, grace is beginning, middle and end. Vināśamē, the destruction of ego, that is, when we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, the ego is no more. In fact, it's not even, though it's described as the destruction of ego, Bhagavan clarified, it's not even the destruction of ego, it's the recognition that there was never any such thing as ego. Ego seems to exist only when we look outwards. When we turn within and see what we actually are, there is no such thing, and there never was any such thing. Therefore, extremely easy, Āṉma-Viddai are extremely easy. So all we need to do is to turn within. That is what the message of Bhagavan is conveying here. It's so easy. It's ever available to us. All we need is the willingness to surrender ourselves completely. That is, surrender ourselves means surrender this ego. But in order to surrender ego, we have to surrender everything else. Because it's ego's attachment to other things, but ego thrives on its attachment to its desire for things other than itself. So until we are willing to surrender ourselves completely, it seems very difficult. Turning within and attending to myself, it's so difficult. So many thoughts arise. Why do those thoughts arise? Because of our interest. Those thoughts are about things other than ourselves. Because we're interested in things other than ourselves, and we are not ready to let go of those things. When we try to turn within, turning within entails letting go of everything else. Because we're unwilling to do so, it seems to be very difficult. Oh, Bhagavan, this self-inquiry, it's very difficult. It's okay, it's easy for you, but it's difficult for us. It's actually, Bhagavan says, it is extremely easy. All we need is to be willing to surrender ourselves. How do we cultivate that willingness to surrender ourselves? By patient and persistent practice. The more we practice trying to turn within, the more we practice surrender, giving up our desires and attachments, so not feeding our desires and attachments, slowly letting go of everything, developing that, trying more and more to turn within, that will develop the love to turn within, and it will weaken our desire for all other things. So the willingness to surrender ourselves, the direct way to achieve that willingness is to persevere in this practice of self-investigation. The more we investigate ourselves, the more love we have to know what we actually are, and consequently the weaker our desires and attachments to all other things become. So it seems difficult at first, but the more we put it into practice, the smoother the way will become. Okay, there's a lot of dirt within us that we're unaware of. So many desires and attachments we may previously not have been aware of. When we follow this path, as Bhagavan said, all that is inside has to come out. So all our desires and attachments, all our lurking fears and hopes and aspirations, everything all comes out. all the good and the bad, everything comes out. But when it comes out, we are faced with a choice. Do we follow our desires? Do we follow the way the outward going flow of our mind? Or do we turn back within? Every time we choose to turn back within, we are weakening that urge to go outwards and strengthening the love to go within. So practice is the only way, patient, persistent practice. And eventually, when we see what we actually are, we recognize, oh, it was so easy after all. All I had to do was let go. Bhagavan said, our unwillingness to let go is like a person standing on the ground holding a branch, saying, I'm not ready to let go of this branch because I may fall. If we let go of the branch, we find we're standing on the ground. There's nothing to fear. But we're afraid to let go because we've been holding on to this branch for so long that we don't trust Bhagavan, who tells us you're already standing on the ground. You yourself are that. There's nothing to fear. By letting go of that branch, all you lose is all your misery. What you gain is the infinite happiness that you actually are. So let go. That willingness to let go is what is required. That we gain by patiently following the path that Bhagavan has shown us, the path of self-investigation and self-surrender.
You talked about willingness, but for me, I just keep asking myself, how do I let go of the branch? I mean, it may be a daft question if you know how to let go of a branch, but I
okay. How are you holding on to things?
Well, I'm making an effort.
Yeah, we hold. Bhagavan described very beautifully in verse 25 of Uludunapadu. He describes ego as uruvatrapeya hande, formless phantom ego. And he says, urupatri undam. That means grasping form, it comes into existence. So since ego is a formless phantom, it doesn't exist without grasping forms. But how does it grasp? Because how can a formless phantom grasp anything? Ego is an awareness, not real awareness, but it's a form of awareness. We grasp things by being aware of them, by attending to them. So in order to let go of everything, we need to cease attending to it. In order to, we hold on to ego by holding on, that we as ego, we nourish our existence as ego by holding on to other things. So in order to let go of ego, we need to let go of other things and attend only to ourselves. So we need to withdraw our attention from all other things. How do we do so? By attending only to ourselves. And the more we attend to ourselves, the more we are thereby letting go of all other things. And the more we attend to ego, the more because as ego we are letting go of other things, we begin to dissolve and subside. Because ego has no existence of its own apart from the forms that it clings to. So when we withdraw our attention from the forms back towards ourselves, ego dissolves, and what remains is pure awareness. So we let go by withdrawing our attention. We withdraw our attention from other things by attending only to ourselves.
And that's what you mean by turning within. You use that phrase a lot.
Yeah. These are all, no words can adequately describe this. But because we're aware of ourselves as a body, the world seems to be out there. We seem to be inside here. But that's in terms of the body. But even the thoughts within our mind, according to Bhagavan, are out there, because there's something other than ourselves. So turning within means turning inwards means turning southwards, turning back towards ourselves, trying to see what we actually are, trying to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. Ultimately, there is no inside and outside. This duality of inside and outside exists because we have risen as ego.
What's the opposite of having a body and a mind in relation to self?
Good question. What is the purpose? What is the benefit? What benefit do we get? In sleep, we have no body and mind. We are perfectly happy.
But I'm not aware of myself in sleep.
Are you not?
No.
You didn't sleep last night?
Well, when I was aware again, it was light outside.
Yeah, okay, but that you're talking now about other things. But when you say I slept, you know you slept. If I come into your room in the morning and ask you, did anyone come into your room last night? You say, no, I don't know, I was asleep. So you don't know what happened around you when you were asleep. But how do you know you were asleep?
Well, it feels like I don't know when I'm asleep that I'm asleep.
You don't know anything else, but you know your own existence. Because you say, I slept. Who slept? The very fact that we are aware I slept means that we were aware of ourselves in sleep. We were not aware of ourselves as anything, because the problem now is we are so used in waking and dream to being aware of things other than ourselves. We take this awareness of other things to be awareness. So we say sleep is a state. There was no awareness in sleep. There was awareness. We were not aware of anything, but we were aware. In order to be aware of anything, we must be aware. But in order to be aware, we don't have to be aware of anything, because awareness is our real nature. So we are always self-aware, even in sleep.
So awareness, in a sense, has a separate existence. It doesn't just come about because there are things.
No, the real awareness is the ultimate reality. It exists independent. It exists because in sleep we are not aware of anything else, but we are still aware. Our aware, we are constant. We are always self-aware. In waking and dream, we are aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am this person, and consequently we're aware of other things. In sleep, we are not aware of ourselves as I am this body. So there's just sleep is a state of pure awareness. Bhagavan said, people think sleep is a state of ignorance, and waking and dream are states of knowledge. Bhagavan says the opposite is the case. Sleep is a state of pure awareness, and waking and dream are states of ignorance, because knowing things, other things, is ignorance according to Bhagavan. Why? Because other things don't actually exist. They merely seem to exist in our awareness. So being aware of anything other than ourselves, according to Bhagavan, is ignorance. That's why he says in verse 13 of Ulladu, Nānavam jnanam ajñānamam. That means awareness that is many, or awareness of multiplicity. In another verse he says, Nāna vaikāṅkindra jnanam. That the awareness that sees as many is ignorance. So being aware of anything other than ourselves is ignorance. Pure awareness is only self-awareness.
Well, I don't make any effort to fall asleep. No. It just happens and that state is there.
It's because of all the effort you've been making in waking and dream, you're tired, you can no longer, when you can no longer make any effort, you fall asleep. But the problem with sleep is, we wake up again. Sleep is a perfect state. The only defect in sleep is that we wake up. Even that defect in sleep is a defect only from the perspective of ourself as ego in waking and dream. What exists in sleep is always as it is. It's ever unchanging. The fundamental awareness I am is ever unchanging.
So what effort can I make then? This is
right. Now we are making effort to go outwards, because we're constantly making this effort to attend to things other than ourselves. After 16 hours or so, we become tired and we fall asleep. When we fall asleep, the reason we wake up again, the reason we come out of sleep, is because of how we go into sleep. In sleep, we are aware of ourself alone. Sleep is a state of pure self-awareness. That pure self-awareness arises out of a result of a subsidence of mind. The mind subsides because of tiredness. So the pure awareness in sleep shines forth when the mind subsides. Because it shines forth when the mind subsides, it doesn't destroy the mind, because there's no mind in sleep to be destroyed. That pure awareness that we experienced in sleep, we need to try to experience that now by turning our attention towards ourself. The more we turn, the deeper and keener our self-attentiveness becomes, the more other things recede into the background until they disappear and we're aware only of ourselves. When we're aware only of ourselves, we're aware of ourselves as we actually are. Ego is destroyed forever. So ego needs to be aware of itself as it actually is. But ego can never be aware of itself as it actually is. But in its effort to be, we can never see the sun. Because if we see the sun, we'll be blinded. But if we try to see the sun, the result is we're blinded. In the same way, ego can never see, as ego, we can never see what we actually are. But if we try to see what we actually are, we as ego get destroyed in the process. And what remains is what we always actually are, which never undergoes any change, which is unaffected by the appearance or disappearance of ego. So all our spiritual practice is not for our real nature, it's only for ourselves. Because we have risen as ego, we've got ourselves into a mess. To get ourselves out of a mess, we need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So, as I say, in sleep, the pure awareness shines as a result of the subsidence of mind. That means subsidence of ego. In self-knowledge, ego subsides, or ego is dissolved, as a result of the shining forth of self-knowledge. So it's a matter of cart and horse. If the cart goes first, the horse will pull it out again. If the horse goes first, that's the end of the story. So the horse is the being aware of ourselves as we actually are, the pure self-awareness. The cart is the subsidence of mind. That needs to follow the being aware of ourselves. Though we say follow, it's instantaneous. There's not a moment when ego is aware of itself as it actually is. As soon as it's aware of itself as it actually is, it's finished. That's why Bhagavan uses this verb, miṉṉun. Miṉṉun means flashes, like lightning. It's instantaneous.
I'm trying to find the self, really.
You're not trying to find the self. There is no the self. The self is a myth. You're trying to find yourself. When we say the self, we are making it into an object, something other than ourself. You forget about the self. All you need to know is yourself. But there is no self other than yourself.
Maybe it's just terminology, but what's the difference between soul and self? So one's real nature.
Words don't have fixed definitions, so words have the meaning that we give them. But generally speaking, when we talk about soul, we are talking about ego. We're talking about ourself as a separate being. So the soul is, in that sense, is ego. But sometimes people use soul as a translation of āṇma, when āṇma is used in the sense of our real nature. So terms, we have to understand the meaning of terms from the context in which they're used. But as a general rule, when you talk of God and souls, souls means the egos. So that which rises in us as I am this body, that is ego, that is soul.
So ultimately, the one particular soul has to dissolve too.
Yes, the soul has to dissolve, and what then remains is our real nature, which is pure awareness.
Michael, is it correct to say that thoughts by themselves are not a problem? So when one is trying to be self-attentive, thoughts arise. But the thoughts themselves, the arising thoughts are not a problem, but the person being drawn away from being self-attentive, that's the problem.
Yeah, the problem is our interest in thoughts. Because we are interested in them, we follow them. But that's why Bhagavan says in Who Am I? What does it matter however many thoughts arise? As and when each thought arises, if we turn our attention back towards ourselves, thoughts are not a problem. The problem is the thoughts arise because of our interest in things other than ourselves. So we need to wean our mind away from its interest in anything other than itself. We wean our mind away from all other things by this practice of self-investigation and self-surrender.
Is it possible to fully turn within and to sort of focus your attention on that sort of self-realization without physically giving up everything else that you're not? Or is it enough to acknowledge the illusory nature of everything?
During this, in order to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, we need to be aware of ourselves alone. In other words, we need to be so keenly self-attentive, but we cease to be aware of anything else. So in that sense, we are giving up all other things. But traditionally, in most spiritual paths, they recommend renunciation. And renunciation is usually understood to mean going and sitting in a cave in the Himalayas, or joining a monastery, or the renunciation of physical things. Giving up a family life, for example, or this is what is generally taken as renunciation. Bhagavan said, real renunciation is only renunciation of ego. Because you can go and sit in a cave in the Himalayas. If you're still interested in the world, you're still going to be thinking about it. You can go and live in a monastery. You can live in a Trappist monastery where you keep silent all the time. But it's so long as your mind is interested in anything other than yourself, it's still clinging to those things. So you're giving up. Instead of having the identification, I am a married person, I'm a mother, or I'm a father, or whatever, you're having, I am a renunciate. There's still the I there, but that I is the problem. That identification of ourself with anything other than ourself is a problem. So Bhagavan said the only renunciation that is needed is renunciation of ego. But if you renounce ego, you thereby renounce everything else. And in order to renounce ego, we don't have to give up other things physically. We have to give up our desire for them, our attachment to them, our interest in them. Because so long as we have interest in other things, our mind will be going out towards them.
So is it not correct to say, in a monastery, for example, if you live in the world, then I'm interested to know what's happening in Brexit, for example. So you're constantly turning outwards because you can. There are opportunities for you to do that. Whereas if you live in a monastery and you have no internet connection and no TV or whatever, you have less of an opportunity to, even if you're interested, and the interest fades away slowly because you can't.
Perhaps. It may happen in some cases, but if you're interested in Brexit and you decide to go to a monastery for a 2-week retreat, what is the first thing you'll ask about when you come out? What's happened about Brexit? Because this is why Bhagavan says this outward renunciation is not the real renunciation, it's inward renunciation which is required. But if you're sitting in a monastery meditating or whatever, you're still going to be thinking what's happening in Brexit, what's happening to my family, you're going to be thinking so many thoughts because you're interested in them. You cannot leave your interest in things outside the door. Because the interest is within you. So the renunciation has to be inward renunciation. And superficially, it seems favourable to be in an environment without distractions. And for some people that may help to some extent. But the real problem is inward. It's not the distractions. Why do we get distracted by things? Why do we think about Brexit? Because we are concerned what effect it's going to have on us, what effect it's going to have on our family, how the food prices are going to go up, how we're not free to travel anymore. So many, we don't know what, and how it's dividing society. It seems to be having so many impacts. So we are interested in it, we are concerned about it. But the problem is not Brexit, the problem is our concern about it. If we were, okay, let the country go to the dogs. Let the prices rise, let there be famine, let there be riots, everything. If we are not unconcerned about it, it's not a problem. The problem, we want a peaceful society, we want a society where people are not, where we don't have racism, where we don't have xenophobia, where we don't have people fighting with each other. We want a peaceful society. The problem is not the fact that society isn't peaceful, the problem is our desire for that. I mean, the world is constantly changing. Sometimes there's war, sometimes there's peace, or there's always war in some part of the world. We just happen to be lucky that we're in a relatively peaceful part of the world. But it can change at any time. The problem is not the war or the famine or all these things, it's our likes and dislikes. If we are free of likes and dislikes, it doesn't matter to us what happens. So the problems all lie within us. Why let's take an extreme example. Why do we find we don't like physical pain? So when we experience physical pain, we're unhappy about it, we're trying to avoid it. Supposing we were able to give up our likes and our dislikes, and if we became indifferent to physical pain, it wouldn't affect us. It affects us only because we like to be free of pain. We don't like pain. And it's the same with everything. Ultimately, it's our likes and dislikes. But how to get rid of likes and dislikes? So long as we rise as ego, we can, to some extent, by spiritual practice, particularly by this self-investigation and self-surrender, we can reduce our likes and dislikes. We can reduce the intensity of them. So we're less affected by things. But we cannot totally give up likes and dislikes. We cannot totally give up desire and attachment, because these are the very nature of ego. So the only way to be free of desire is to be free of the one who has desire. That is ego.
It seems a bit like a medical question, but I don't know if it's relevant. But it seems to me when somebody becomes self-realized, something happens in the brain, and something comes apart, because it takes a while for people to come back again and mend, and I don't know, neuron synapses or something to come back. Because Bhagavan took a year or two to just be able to eat normal meal times.
Yes, but Bhagavan said all that is in the view of the onlooker. Because actually there's no such thing as a self-realized person. Because so long as you're a person, you're not self-realized. And when you're self-realized, you're not a person. Okay, Bhagavan, we take him to be a self-realized person. That's true in a sense, but he says, I am not this person you take me to be. That is, his experience is something completely different. We see him as a person means a body and a mind. He lived after the dissolution of his ego, his body lived for another 54 years. He traveled to Tirunelveli. People came to him, he answered questions and everything. But Bhagavan said, this is all in your view. In one verse he says that he tried to explain this in so many ways. In one way he said, this is all in the view of the onlooker. Another way he explained it, he said, but jnani is like a person sleeping in a cart. A person sleeping in a cart is not aware whether the cart is moving, whether the bullocks are standing still or whether the cart is unyoked. They're still sleeping. Likewise, the jnani is not aware of the body at all. Whether it's active or whether it's in samadhi or whether it's asleep or whatever, jnani is not aware of it.
But he did start eating at meal times and things like
Who started eating? That body started eating. We take that body to be Bhagavan. That is, his view is completely different to our view. Because we mistake ourselves to be a body, we mistake him to be a body. But in his experience, he is just pure infinite awareness.
But his body needed to be nourished to stay.
In our view, yes.
It didn't really.
Because another thing to remember, Bhagavan said this is all a dream. So in a dream, how many dreamers are there in a dream? Just one. There's many people there, but one dreamer. That one dreamer is aware of itself as if it's a person in the dream, but actually it's all its own dream. So Bhagavan there's an analogy that Bhagavan gave. The guru is like the tiger, is like the lion that appears in the dream of an elephant. There's a popular belief, but elephants are so afraid of lions. But if a lion appears in lion or tiger, I can't remember which, a tiger maybe. If the tiger appears in the dream of an elephant, the elephant will at once wake up. So that's used as an analogy. The guru is like that lion that appears in the dream of the elephant. The lion in the dream of the elephant is unreal, but it brings about a real awakening. So also the name and form of guru is not real, but he appears in name and form in order to wake us up. The waking up will be real. But so long as we seem to be this body, so long as we take this body to be real, it's real that Bhagavan is this person. But that is not actually the truth.
But he did actually leave his body when he was 70 years old.
He left his body when he was 16 years old.
What was the second stage then? When he had cancer?
That's the body had cancer. And when people say, oh, Bhagavan, you're leaving, he said, where can I go? So he is here and now. He's within you. He is the pure consciousness, that awareness of our own existence, that I am, that is Bhagavan. When someone asked Bhagavan, someone wrote a verse in Malayalam, because some people said Bhagavan is an incarnation of Subramanya, other people said no, he's an incarnation of Shiva, different gods. So this person wrote a verse, are you Vishnu, or are you Shiva, or are you Subramanya? Who are you? Who is this Muni Ramanan, he said, or Muni Guru Ramana, or something, he said. Bhagavan replied, used the name Arunachala Ramana to refer to himself, because he's identified himself with Arunachala. Arunachala Ramana is the Paramatma. Paramatma means you can say supreme, the ultimate self, the supreme spirit. But exists blissfully in the heart of all living beings, beginning from Vishnu. That means, it implies from the highest God down to the smallest creature, in the heart of all jivas, that which is shining blissfully as awareness, that is Arunachala Ramana. If you turn within with heart-melting love and seek within, then it will be revealed. So this is not Ramana. This is not the real form of Bhagavan. The real form of Bhagavan is what is shining in you as I.
Sorry, another question.
Can I just add one more thing? The whole purpose of the Guru appearing outwardly in name and form Any guru who says, come to me, I will give you enlightenment, is not a real guru. The guru will say, you are already enlightened, turn within and see yourself. Guru will never never attach importance to their own name and form, because they know the name and form is unreal. But the name and form exists only in your view. So they will tell you to see me as I am, see yourself. So the whole purpose of Bhagavan appearing in name and form was to tell us to turn within. Of course we love the name and form, we love the person, we love everything about him, because he's given us such a great treasure. Actually, he hasn't given us anything. He's told us that the treasure, what we are seeking is already within us. That is, in effect, is a great treasure. Because previously we were looking for it outside. But, so it's natural for us to love his name and form, but that is not the real Guru Bhakti is not to worship the name and form of Bhagavan. Real Guru Bhakti is to follow what Bhagavan said, which is to turn within.
But if his body is he shaved and he carries body, right? And although he doesn't identify this body, so that means this body itself.
But we're still thinking in terms of limitation. Bhagavan is not a person. Bhagavan is the infinite pure awareness. In our view, he appeared in the form of a body.
So what is this, the body? So what's the relationship between this real Bhagavan, who's the self, pure consciousness?
What was shining through that body, we were given teachings. We were told to turn within. What is shining in the form of this body, that is the supreme reality. But to really know that supreme reality, we can't find it in this form. This form tells us it's within you. Turn within and find within yourself. If you want to know me, know yourself.
So doesn't that maybe, so there is a purpose of having so in order...
But definitely a purpose, because if, Bhagavan, another analogy Bhagavan used, he said it's like using a tame deer as a decoy to catch a wild deer. Because we take ourselves to be a name and form, and to be a human being, Guru appears in the form of a human being. That's like the decoy you use to catch the wild deer. But the whole purpose of his appearing in name and form is to tell us to turn within. To tell us what you are seeking is within you.
I have another question. I was just reading the Who Am I? I read this passage where the placement of mind is within the heart. So is it not physical body, but it's what heart?
Yes, but what Bhagavan means by heart, he's not talking about the physical heart. What he means by heart means center. So what is the center of everything? I. That the whole world is centered. What is this, from your perspective, what is the center of the whole universe? I am. This is the vantage point from which we see everything. So we ourselves are the heart. Heart is a name for our real nature. So when he says in the heart, what he means is that is. So he's not talking about a place in the body. But there were some people who were very much attached to yogic ideas. So when Bhagavan talked about the heart, they said, where is the heart? Bhagavan said, the heart is not in any place. Everything is in the heart. The whole universe is in the heart. But they still want to say, is it the Anahata chakra or this chakra or that chakra? For those people who couldn't think beyond body, he said 2 digits to the right from the center of the chest. Why? Because that is actually what we experience as the center of ourself. If you say, if I ask you, who can calculate this, do this calculation, you say, oh, I can. You don't say that. If I ask, who can run to the shop and and buy some fruit, you don't say, oh, I can run. We always point, I can run, I can do the sum. It's me. That's the natural place we point. Why? Because that is what we experience as our center. And you can see it at other times. Supposing you're walking down the street and suddenly a car behind you honks and you get a shock. If you observe, the shock comes from here. So in anything, when some calamity happens in our life and we feel really miserable, we feel something here. We say a person is broken-hearted. So we have that, but that's all relative to the body. When the body is not I, how can this place be the origin of I? But what Bhagavan means by heart, it was only later, because for people who didn't have a subtle understanding, but he talked about his heart on the right-hand side. When he's talking about it in ṇeṉṉai, he's talking about what he means by heart is our real nature.
Our real nature, as you said, happiness, joy, and peace, all this, yes, which I've never experienced, but I don't understand how. I just don't understand why that's the real nature. I mean, maybe just because of happiness, joy, and all this positive.
Actually, we all know our real nature, but we don't know it as it is. Because our real nature is just pure awareness. But now we experience awareness mixed with other things. So instead of experiencing pure awareness, we experience this mixed awareness, I am this body. So because of this wrong identification of ourselves with the body, our real nature is seemingly obscured. So our real nature is not only infinite awareness, it's also infinite happiness. But we don't experience infinite happiness. What we're experiencing now is a mixture of pleasure and pain. Throughout the waking and dream state, we're experiencing pleasure and pain in greater or lesser degrees. We never experience infinite happiness. Though infinite happiness is what we actually are. That is our real nature. In order to recognize that as our real nature, we need to know what we actually are. So it is ego that obscures the purity of our awareness. It's ego that obscures the infinity of our happiness. Our real nature is infinite happiness. That means eternal happiness. There is never a moment when we are not perfectly happy. But we seem to be not happy because we've limited ourselves. So the whole problem is ego. Bhagavan is a great doctor. If you go to a doctor with a disease, if the doctor doesn't know what is the root cause of your disease, they'll only treat the symptoms. But Bhagavan is not such a doctor. He goes to the very root of the disease, because only by dealing with the root, only when you go to the root cause, can you really cure the disease. So Bhagavan has said the root cause of this disease is ego. Everything is, it's only because of this mistaken awareness, I am this body, all these troubles come. In sleep, we're not aware of ourselves as I am this body, therefore we're not aware of everything else, therefore we're perfectly happy, perfectly satisfied. Not an iota of dissatisfaction in sleep. But in waking and dream, we experience ourselves as I am this body, and all problems come as a result. We're aware of so many other things. Some things are good, some things are bad. Good and bad is determined by what we like and what we dislike. What we like is good, what we dislike is bad. So all these dualities, all these pairs of opposites come into existence because we have limited ourselves as this body. If we remain as we actually are, as pure awareness, there is no duality. There is just pure awareness, nothing else. Pure awareness means awareness that is aware of nothing other than itself. That is what we actually are. And that is infinite happiness. And that is what actually exists. So that is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat, what is, what exists. Chit, pure awareness. Ananda, infinite happiness.
Is it possible to live in a world in that?
Even now you're not living in the world. The world is living in you. In dream, You seem to be in a world, don't you? But where is that dream world? It's all in your mind. Likewise, this whole universe, vast universe, with all these galaxies and billions of light years, and what scientists are discovering more and more things, where is it all? It's all in your mind. And where is your mind? It's in you. So know yourself and you can dispense of everything else.
We know who we are.
What?
We all know who we are. We all know. But we got to see who we are, surely.
Well, we know that we are. Everyone knows I am. But problem is, we now know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. You know yourself as I am Mary. I know myself as I am Michael.
No, I don't know. I know myself as that. But I haven't seen that.
What is the difference between knowing and seeing?
Do you mean intellectually understanding it and then actually experiencing it?
Well done. Thank you. Yeah. The mind knows what it is.
Yeah, but that's only conceptual knowledge. That's not real knowledge.
But it actually
But it's also
experiencing it. You're not going to get there until you experience who you are.
Yeah. So yes. So
it's all right. It's all right to conceptualize in your mind. That's not going to get you there. No way.
But pure awareness, real awareness, is just the fundamental awareness of our own existence, I am. Now that I am is mixed up with other things. We're aware, so I am Michael, I am Mary, I am whoever. That is the problem. That is ego. That which is aware of itself as I am Mary or I am Michael, that is ego. That false awareness, I am Mary, that is ego. Remove that false awareness, remove the Mary, what remains is I am.
But you've got to turn to this.
Yes.
To reality.
Yes.
And you've got to experience that.
Yes.
Before the ego can be damaged, so to speak.
Well, yes, yeah, but when you see what you actually are, that's when you're aware of yourself as you actually are, instantaneously ego is destroyed. In fact, as I said earlier, it's not even true to say ego is destroyed. At that moment you recognize there never was any such thing as ego, because you have always been that pure awareness.
Yes. Now, another point is, where is inside and where is outside?
Right.
Now, when one is meditating,
Yes.
the inside, I've been struggling with this problem actually for a long time.
Yeah.
The inside is where your attention is. And your attention wanders off.
No, I think that's not a correct, because now my attention is on you.
Yes.
But you, in my experience, you are outside of me. According to Bhagavan...
But you're clocking it.
Yes, according to
you're
Bhagavan,
clocking what's going
everything
on.
other than ourself, everything that appears and disappears is outside. What is inside is only ourself.
It's inside, to me, is what you're clocking, what you are. It's where your attention is, so to speak.
Yes, but
your
that's
attention,
not, okay.
Your attention wanders off. I mean, you could be meditating, and you're watching the breath, and then it's wandered off. Yeah. And you suddenly say, hey, hang on a second, it's way over there, or it's thinking of this, or it's thinking of tomorrow.
Yeah. But the sense in which Bhagavan uses inside and outside, Outside means anything extraneous, anything other than ourselves. Inside means ourselves.
Everything is outside.
What?
Everything.
Everything is outside, even our thoughts, even our...
me.
Yeah, Mary is outside, yes.
Absolutely.
But you are not outside, you are inside.
I am it.
Yeah,
I am that.
yeah.
So how can I be inside or outside?
Inside and outside has a meaning only in,
That's what I'm trying
terms of ego, mind.
That's what I'm trying to arrive at. Where is inside?
You are inside.
The whole lot. Because I am that.
When you say everything, all,
Everything,
okay.
including all you people.
all these things appear in whose view?
My view.
That my is in the view of ego. When you don't rise as ego, in sleep you don't rise as ego, where is all this?
It is me. It is.
Well, yes, in a sense, yes.
Because there is only one.
Yes, but multiplicity, so long, there is only one, but so long as we see many, we are not seeing the only one. You cannot say, you cannot
Yes,
see many
there is the
and see
dilemma.
one at the same time. Either you see one or you see many.
Right? That is the dilemma. And you're trying to.
So stop seeing, so long as you see anything other than yourself, you've got two things. You've got a subject and an object. See yourself alone, you've only got one thing then.
See yourself alone, and there is no ego.
Yeah, there's no ego, there's nothing.
There's nothing. So basically, to see yourself alone, you've got to turn inwards.
Yeah, you've got to turn your attention southwards.
To turn yourself to you.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly.
So what I'm trying to figure out is where the hell I am. Where am I? Where is inside?
That is what self-investigation is all about. That's why Bhagavan called it, sometimes he referred to this as meditation, but generally he used the term investigation, vichara in Sanskrit or natam in Tamil. Why he called it investigation? Because if you're meditating, you can meditate on, say, you can meditate on flower, you can meditate on Bhagavan.
Yes.
It's a passive thing. This is a, well, even passive is not quite right. This is an investigation. You're looking for something. You're trying to see what you actually are.
Even when you meditate on a flower, you can't stay with it. Your mind is going to run away.
That is the problem with any meditation, but that's not the issue. What I'm trying to say is, we are trying to attend to ourselves. We are trying to attend to ourselves with a purpose in order to see what we actually are.
We're trying to figure out how we can stabilize attention on oneself.
Yeah, but when you say figure out sounds like a bit of a mental process, but we are trying by trial and error. What is self-attentiveness? We can learn what is self-attentiveness only by trying to be self-attentive. The more we try to be self-attentive, the closer and closer we come to pure self-attentiveness. So we learn by practice. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. The only way to learn to ride a bicycle is to try to ride a bicycle. The only way to learn self-attentiveness or self-attention or self-investigation is to try. Try to attend to yourself.
One tries, but you know, the mind has a mind of its own. The mind tends to run away and do what it is. Where your attention is, one is trying to direct the attention in one direction.
Back to its source, back to itself.
And keep it there. And that is the problem. And that is where inside is.
Yeah, but the reason it doesn't stay there is because ego is not, it will stay there only when ego is dissolved. So we need to be looking at ourselves ever more closely, ever more closely, ever more closely. The more closely we look at ourselves, the greater the clarity will be and the more ego will dissolve.
Agreed.
And the more closely we look at ourselves, the more our desires and attachments for other things also gets weakened.
And
so it gets easier to attend to ourselves.
If you watch yourself and you see, you're doing other things, and you suddenly see that your attention has run away, and you bring it back, and as you go along, this happens more often. You're sitting on a bus and you've put your card on the seat next door and you've forgotten about it. Your attention has disappeared. It's gone off that way. You haven't clocked it. So it's a question of clocking, of watching.
The more closely
the attention.
The more closely we attend to ourselves, the more quickly we will recognize when the attention slips away.
And it slips away.
It does,
It's very difficult to keep it. Although, of course, it's
because the reason it slips away is when we turn our attention towards ourselves.
No, attention just loves.
But why is that? Why is that? It's because when we turn our attention towards ourselves, we begin dissolving. Because we are not yet willing to let go, our attention runs outwards. Because by grasping other things, we are sustaining our existence as ego. So it's a struggle, it's a life and death struggle, literally.
So I mean, I find that if I clock things, it sort of obeys me a little bit. But it sort of obeys me. I can control it a bit better. You're clocking it.
The more keenly we attend to ourselves, the more quickly we will recognize what you call clocking it. The more quickly we will clock it when our attention slips away. So by looking at ourselves keenly, ever more closely, we gain the skill to look at ourselves more closely.
And you can do it.
And we can more easily catch ourselves when we slip away.
And you can do it. I mean, you don't have to sit down and say, now I will sit and watch
it can be at any time.
You can do it when you're doing, you say, hey, it's run away again.
Exactly.
All right, okay, thanks very much. Thank you.
I think you wanted to ask a question earlier.
I'll maybe describe something and then I'll come to the question. As I've heard many things today, it almost seems a little bit of a questions around this, almost a struggle with what happens in the form. Whereas I, as in my mind, is seeing whatever happens, happens. So the body needs to eat, it eats, you go shopping. So there is no struggle in the sense of as Bhagavan says, let the train go and take the load of the train. So
exactly.
There isn't an element of effort. It's not a fight I have in my own mind. Because the mind, the things, whatever's going to happen physically will happen.
Yes. But struggle is a struggle within our will. If we are willing to let go, then there's no struggle. The problem is we're not willing to let go. We still want to carry our luggage on our head. We may to some extent be willing to put it aside, but we're not yet willing to completely let go of everything. So there's a struggle between our love to surrender ourselves completely and our lack of willingness to let go entirely. That's what spiritual practice is all about. It is that struggle it's a struggle, the whole of spiritual practice is a struggle within our own will. What do we want? Do we want to turn within and dissolve back into our source? Or do we want to continue clinging to things outside? The truth is, as of so far, we have not yet got that willingness to let go entirely. Yes, we want to know ourselves. Yes, we want to surrender ourselves. Yes, we want to be free of all these problems. But still we're not yet willing to pay the price. We're not yet willing to let go entirely. Okay, I'll let go with this hand, but at least this hand I must hold on to the branch, just in case.
The letting go I feel I'm more relaxed with things in the sense of there isn't a I'm letting go more.
Yeah.
I don't feel as though I don't have a struggle with that I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that, because the mind itself becomes...
This is all part of the process. Slowly, slowly, we become more willing to let it be.
Yeah, to let it be.
Just let it be. This is all part of the process. But we are still not willing to let go entirely. If you were willing to let go entirely, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be asking these questions. We wouldn't be here. We would all have dissolved in the pure light of awareness that's always shining in your heart.
So I'm willing to, I take things as they come along. Yeah. So if I'm going shopping, things happen. I know things are as they're meant to be. Yeah. It is all destined. Yeah. I'm very relaxed with that. Yeah. But then as I go shopping, there are thoughts in my mind that that actually I like this thing, let me purchase it. But at the same time, I know that it is meant to be.
But we shouldn't be too complacent. We shouldn't be too confident, because sometimes everything seems to be going well. We seem to be having less attachment. We seem to be then some big blow will come in our life, and then we'll find how strongly we are still attached to things. Yes. This is all part of the process. The blows are given to us outside to wake us up and to keep us on our toes.
So my question is, if the physical actions are predetermined, the thoughts that go along with it are also predetermined?
No, it's not as simple as that. What you are to experience in this life is predetermined. You cannot experience anything that you are not destined to experience. In order to experience what you're destined to experience, let's take an example. Supposing it's your destiny to become a professor in a university. In order to become a professor in a university, you have to have a degree, you have to have a master's degree, you have to have a PhD. You have to go through a process, so many years of study before you're qualified to be a professor in a university. So because it's your destiny to be a professor, you will be made to do all the actions that are necessary to become a professor. So those actions are driven by your destiny. But your destiny is not the only thing that is driving your actions. Your actions are also being driven by your will. If you want to be a professor, your will and your destiny are working hand in hand. You want to be a professor, and your destiny is to be a professor. But many of us want to be something, and we turn out to be something completely different because it's not our destiny. So our will is sometimes working in parallel with destiny. Sometimes it's working opposed to destiny. If it's working opposed to destiny, we are free to try to change things, but we're not actually free to change it. Oh, I'm fed up with studying, I want to give up studying. Something will drive you on, because you're destined to become a professor. Something will drive you on to continue your studies, complete your studies, and become a professor. So our will, we can want anything we like. Our will is completely free. We can want anything we want. In fact, by definition, we want whatever we want. So our will is always free. But our freedom to act is limited. And our freedom to change what what is destined to happen is absolutely no freedom at all. So we've got infinite freedom to want, or to will, we've got limited freedom to act, and we've got no freedom to actually change anything. But on the spiritual path, it's our using our will to try to change things is the problem. So that's why we need to give up all our desires, give up all our attachments, give up all our likes and dislikes, our hopes, our fears, everything we need to give up. But only when we're willing to give up all of these will we eventually be willing to give up the one who has desires, the one who has attachments, one who has fears. We cannot, of course, completely give up all our desires and fears and everything until ego is annihilated. But we can, to a great extent, we can lessen them. That's why Bhagavan gives this analogy of taking of a passenger on the train with the luggage on his head. Put it aside. So putting it aside means giving up our likes and dislikes, giving up our cares and concerns about things other than ourselves. We can do so to a certain extent, but none of us, there's no such thing as a completely desireless ego, because desire is the very nature of ego. And with desire comes attachment, fear, and everything else. So we don't reach a safe harbor until ego is annihilated. Thank you.
Mike, I just want to ask you a question about turning within or self-surrender again. One of the problems I've had, which I think others do as well, is the mind, although it's not truly real, it is a nuisance, it seems. And it does want to, as we often say in these meetings, intellectualize things or analyze things. So in terms of turning within, I've caught myself many times being very quiet, peaceful, just aware in a more pure way. But then, of course, the mind will come in and say things like, well, that's it, or no, that's not it, or you've gone off again. And it's almost got a narrative there, which is very annoying. And it was so annoying, it would take you off and of itself, that commentary. What I'm starting to find, just to start with, is I'm almost becoming less interested in that, which is naturally allowing me to just be more quiet without going off. My question really is, I used to want to figure things out, well, if when we die, is it just a void? Well, I don't really fancy a void. That sounds a bit negative. What actually is going to happen? Surely it's nicer than that. And all these intellectual games the mind plays, I used to still have that with me when I was quiet, whereas I'm less bothered about answering those questions now. It seems okay to not have an answer, so to speak, if that makes sense, and just be quiet. And I thought that would be a bit miserable and a bit flat and dark, but actually it isn't. It's okay of itself, and I don't understand it, but I'm learning to let go of even wanting to understand it. And I don't know whether that's on the right tracks, but it seems intuitively right.
Yeah, it is.
To be in that space, if I can use words to describe things.
It is right. In Tamil, there's a work called Tirukkural, which is a collection of, I think, 1,300 or 3,000 verses or something. They're just two-line verses. One of them is a particularly nice one. Yaḍaliṇ Nīnginan Nodal aruļ. Bhagavan often used to quote this one. What it means is, from whatever you give up, or from whatever you withdraw yourself, you're free from the suffering caused by that thing. That's not exact translation, but that's more or less the gist of it. So the more we manage to let go, the more we manage to be unconcerned about things, the freer we'll be. So actually Bhagavan's path is a path of happiness. When Bhagavan gives that analogy of the passenger on the train carrying the luggage on his head, he said, why to suffer carrying the luggage on the head, instead of putting it aside and traveling happily. So the more we surrender, the happier we will be. The more we let go, the more we are unconcerned about things, the easier it will be. But because we're not willing to let go, it seems to be a struggle. But the struggle is only due to our unwillingness to let go. We need not do any sadhana at all. We can leave everything to Bhagavan if we're ready to let go. Because we're not ready to let go, we have to struggle. But that is our aim. Our aim is ultimately to let go of everything. Because when we let go of everything, then we merge back in our source, and what remains is only Bhagavan. How to let go of everything? That's the question. Cling to yourself. By clinging to yourself, you're letting go of everything else.
So I say that once you put your luggage down, that's it. I don't need to do anything at all. I don't need to meditate. I don't need to do anything at all. I just live.
But what is the luggage? What is the root of all the luggage is ego. When you put ego down, then all problems are over. But we're not yet ready to give up this ego.
What we're saying is that we haven't realized, what you're saying is that we haven't realized we're on the train. That's what you're saying.
Yes. That's why Bhagavan said, when you know the train is carrying all the burden, train means that divine grace, everything is being taken care of by grace. If you really believe everything is being taken care of, you will happily put your luggage down. Because we don't truly believe Bhagavan, we don't truly believe Bhagavan is doing everything for us, but we need not do anything at all.
Okay, if you let go of angry thoughts and all worldly concerns, I mean, in terms of going back to Brexit, let's say, isn't it good to have some social awareness? All the whole world is my mental construct, right? It's not real, it's illusory. But isn't it important to take actions for other people? And although it's, I just don't know how. As long as we do we do things without this sense of ego.
The thing is, Bhagavan said this whole world is a dream. It's all entirely unreal. But when we are dreaming, the dream always seems to be real. Why does a dream seem to be real? Because when we are dreaming, we take a dream body to be ourself. Because we are real, if that dream body is ourself, that dream body is real. Or it seems to be real, because it seems to be ourself. And because the dream body seems to be real, the dream body is part of that dream world. So you can't have a real body in an unreal world. If the body is real, then the whole world is real. So while we are dreaming, the dream seems to be real. Now we're dreaming this dream. So this seems to be real. Because this seems to be real, we have so much care about this body. In the winter, we like to be wrapped up warm. When it's raining, we like to protect ourselves. We like to have an umbrella or a raincoat or to be indoors. When it's hot, we like to have air conditioning. We want adequate food every day. We want nice, clean air. We want clean water. As a body, we have so many needs. And we take so much care of this body. We take so much pains to take care of this body. If we are concerned only about this body and not about any other body, that is a stronger attachment. When ego begins dissolving, though we still experience this body as I, our identification is less strong. So when we see others suffering, for example, we feel it as if we are suffering. So just like we don't like to go hungry, we don't like other people to go hungry. So if we see a hungry person, we share our food with them. This is the kindness and compassion is a sign of beginning of ego beginning to dissolve. So long as we are looking outwards, yes, we should be kind and compassionate. We should be caring. But in a dream, if you see people, supposing you see a dream of people starving, or you see a dream of a war, how to solve all the problems you see in your dream? The best you can do for all the suffering you see in your dream is to wake up. So the best help we can do for this world, with all its problems, all its Brexit and its Trumps and its the wars and the famines and the injustice and so many, I mean, open the news every day. There's Hong Kong, where people want democracy, they're being suppressed by China. In America, there's so many, I mean, everywhere in the world. Here in London, there's knife crime, there's so many problems. There's problems caused by this government's austerity. So many problems are there in the world. How can we even begin to solve these problems? We feel concerned when we look outwards. But the best to solve all these problems, to solve the problems of all wars, all famines, every conceivable problem in the world, Bhagavan has shown us a simple solution. Wake up. So if we are really concerned about others, Buddha's story is a nice story. Buddha was born as a prince. He grew up in a palace. Because the astrologers had told his father at the time of his birth, he will either be a great emperor or he'll renounce everything. His father didn't want him to renounce everything, so his father didn't want him to be exposed to the suffering of life. So his father kept all suffering, all hunger, disease, old age, death, was trying to protect him from all these things. But one day he went out in his chariot on his own, and he saw the people in his country. There were old people, there were sick people, there were hungry people, there were animals suffering. He saw so much suffering. Then he thought to himself, this suffering, this is going to happen to everyone. We're all going to get old one day. We're all going to get sick. We're all going to die. So by that time he was married and he had children. He had a child, I think. At least he was married. So he thought, I cannot protect my wife. I cannot protect my family from disease and old age and death. So I've got to find the answer. What is the solution? How can we avoid all this suffering? So he left his family. That's seemingly very cruel, to leave his young wife and to go off as a mendicant. But he did so out of compassion, because he knew that even if he stays at home and he lives a life as a king and provides everything his wife needs, one day she's going to die and she's going to grow old and die. And disease can come, he can't protect her from disease. So he wanted to find out what is the root of all suffering, what is the cause of all suffering. So he became a renunciate, and he did tapas for so many years, and he became Buddha. He found the solution. So whatever we do, when we see suffering in the world, we can go out and try and do good work, we can try and feed the hungry, we can do this and that. But it's just that it's just like a grain of sand in a vast beach. It's a drop in the ocean. But there's still so much suffering that we can't solve. But if we turn within, we can solve all suffering. So though when we look outward, naturally we feel concerned about all the suffering in the world. But that concern for the suffering in the world should prompt us to turn within. Because only by turning within, as if we are unconcerned about everything else, will we find the solution. The solution is to know ourselves and thereby wake up and bring this dream to an end.